recording as of now. All right. Hi, Jan. How's it going?
Well, I am in the middle of rehearsal,
Yes,
and
you
it's
are.
a rehearsal like I'd never done before.
Right on. We are going to chat about that. My name is Liz, and I'm one of the production dramaturgs on the show. And this is Jan Selman. And what are you up to, Jan?
So I'm directing a reboot adaptation of Chrysothemis, which is a beautiful new play by Meg Braem. And we started it last year. And on March 13th, 14th, we were shut down about 3 weeks from opening and had to go home. And now we're having the great opportunity to revisit it and try to reconceive it for COVID times.
Awesome. Let's chat about that a little bit. So you did an interview with the new play dramaturg, Kate Weiss, back in March, I think, where you had mentioned in that conversation with her about the importance of staging a new play in a way that is true to the play, and so that the playwright can see what they've created and really kind of dig into what the play is trying to say. And so, of course, you're now trying to stage this play that's written for live performance in a theater under circumstances where you have all these restrictions, including masks and physical distancing and all these things that are drastically changing, I imagine, how you initially envisioned the show. How has that been either a challenge or a gift as a director in terms of getting at the heart of what Meg has written and being true to what this show is trying to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. First and foremost, new plays are, in a way, they only exist, although they exist on the page before the first production. They really only exist once it opens. And this is such a gift to now try again to open this play. It's a beautiful play, and it should be open and shared. So we're really thrilled to be back. Absolutely. I love your question, because I still want to, if you will, reveal the play as Meg imagined it. Obviously, the director brings more than the playwright imagined and tries to discover what the playwright was imagining and show it to her. And I still believe in that, and I would still believe we're trying to do that, but absolutely in some new ways because of the new conditions. It's been fascinating. It was about 7 months maybe between when we walked out, not knowing we weren't coming back, and we walked back in. And all of the actors, as well as myself, are, on one hand, we remember things that were really important to us. And on the other hand, certain things seem very far away and not so important anymore. So it's a fascinating, just personal journey back into this material for everybody. But back to your question. What I feel is we're opening up the play in a slightly different way, at some points in the play in a radically different way, but it is still the play first, absolutely the play first. But what we're invited to do, of course, in these times is figure out how people stay far apart yet stay connected. I mean, the theater is so good at being about how people and characters connect and don't connect and try to connect and miss each other. And we're still doing that. But if they in fact would be holding each other's hand and we have to instead be 2 meters apart, what is the moment that still says the essence of that, but is not 2 characters holding hands? And that's our journey all the way through every single of the 21 scenes of the play, right, to figure that out.
And so how have you been dealing with things like, I know in the script, there's quite a few moments of intimacy, like of romantic intimacy, as well as fight choreography. And I won't try not to give too much away about the plot if people don't know the story already, but like how have you managed to tell that story in a way that is abiding by all these COVID-19 guidelines in those specific moments that are hard to tell the story without in like physical proximity?
Yeah, let me give you a couple of examples. The answer is style in its biggest sense. Like, what's the meaning of that moment when she brushes her sister's hair, for example? What's the meaning of that? And how can a different style, still contain that intimate moment between two sisters that let them talk about things they haven't talked about before. And so you go to the essence of what is that about? What's it trying to do? And then you say, how in the theater can you do that? And the theater is beautifully magical. You can brush someone's hair from across the stage, truly. And you can share that with an audience, truly, if you get it right. And so that's one we're doing. That's, both actors, both characters are brushing their hair, but we know from the text that one person is brushing the other's hair.
Right.
And, it's an incredibly simple solution. And it's beautiful. I mean, that's one we've solved, I think.
Well, and I guess, even further to that, then, so in this problem solving that you're having to do, has it actually turned into into a gift in some places in terms of really getting at the heart of what's happening in a moment, or discovering a moment in a different way, or having a more theatrical, I don't know, I guess, what have you found working under the restrictions that has actually been fulfilling and deepening the meaning, as opposed to trying to substitute for what you would have been doing?
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I want to say two things about that. One is the play already had elements that were not realistic, and they were purposefully in contrast to the more realistic parts of the play, sometimes in the very same scene. And so for example, two characters are really dealing with each other in sort of realistically, if you will, but other characters are walking through that scene, not seen by them, for example, out to the audience, for example. And that already was there. So on one hand, the play opens itself to a variety of styles very easily. It's quite classical, although it's very contemporary as well. So that was there. But what concerned me as a director was to not overshadow those moments that needed, in my opinion, in my interpretation, to have those moments by doing a whole bunch more of it, right? You wanted high contrast to that realism. So what I wanted to do was find a different other non-realistic style to go at some of these things that would be in a more realistic mode if we weren't in the middle of COVID. And I think, the hair brushing is an example where it just still is, but the actors have to play the intimacy of that from far apart, and we ask the audience to go with us imaginatively. But there's another side of this, which the need to do that has forced me to relook at some material, some scenes, some moments. And what I feel is the poetry of the script is getting more emphasis, more opportunity in this production, which is wider and bigger. The gestures are larger because you're not as near each other, or
Right.
you're on this whole stage, and that goes with this beautifully poetic play that we have to work with. So there's a number of points where I suddenly am hearing different things in that same speech that we thought was perfect last March. It's really exciting. And there are other huge problems, if you will, presented, because if you say the love scene where it becomes very intimate is meant to be realistically played, albeit with elevated language, you miss that contrast of elevated language beside actually, people holding hands, people kissing, all the things that happen in an intimate relationship. And when you can't do that, something has happened with the work we've done where it's almost open and shared more with the audience than it would be otherwise. So oddly, in distancing it, I think there's a more intimate opportunity for the audience, the live audience, to have in some of these moments. Like, I see your whole face. It's not covered by your hair because you're leaning over someone and blah, blah, blah.
Right. So although the physical intimacy between the actors is less, there's more intimacy with the audience because of necessity of opening things up.
At points. We also have ghosts in this play, and there are two different kinds of ghosts, and they're very exciting, and people will see them if they come. They thrive in this larger space. they really thrive because ghosts can be everywhere and anywhere. And suddenly that act is opening up our staging of the ghosts. And it's actually better. Like,
Right.
and it was perfect in March, but it's better in November, December, because they suddenly own the whole stage instead of, a little part, because I was saving this section for that space and that section for that space. Now the whole stage is theirs. And so I think we're possibly giving a greater essence of ghost because of being forced here. So we're discovering things as we go, both in the language and in some of the representations of characters and events. Yeah.
That's great. And so would you say overall, in terms of like directing during the times of COVID,
Yeah.
that it kind of just comes down to really making strong stylistic choices that are consistent throughout in order to tell the story? Or is it more responding individually to every moment and coming up with a creative solution? Like, would you say, yeah, just from a directorial perspective, is it
Oh,
more about deciding on style, or is it about responding to what you're discovering, or both? I imagine it's probably both, but
well, it has to be both because I think, we want the theater to continue right now. We don't want it to go silent. It's very important that it stays alive in various ways, online, but also absolutely live, and that we find ways to do it. And so I'm not sure every play is suited to this, but on the other hand, I would suggest that we all have the challenge to find out how is this play and this time possible. Like a whole bunch of our plays that have survived through the centuries are done very differently in each century because of our different tastes and view and everything else. Well, I think right now, every play faced with this dilemma, and every director and set of actors and designers faced with these dilemmas will find like very different solutions. I
right.
don't think it's a formula in any way. And that's why I started with what opportunities this play gave us, which was already some distances of style. So how can we capitalize on that? We're lucky, both our design and our text kind of is actually thriving in this rehearsal period.
That's
and
great.
this adaptation. We've decided it can't be called a reboot because that would be starting again to do it the same way. Whereas this is an adaptation of a former idea.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I think we're just about at time, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Jan. Appreciate it. And look
I
forward
would want
to the
to
show.
leave your audience with just a thought about how do you stage a kiss? How do you stage a murder in the time of COVID? Come and see, we've got two options for people.
I'm excited to see it. Thanks.